Welcome back to episode 148 of the Disorganized Wizard Club podcast. My name is Alex. I'm joined as always by Adam.
Hello.
And by Cam.
Yeah.
And we're a group of Ottawa-based players that play just about anything and everything we can qualify for. We talk about decks, tournament stories, just about anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic.
Dude, Cam's sick.
It's been a rough week for you, eh, buddy?
Yeah.
I'm on the tail end of it. I've been having some Buckleys. Tastes awful and it seems like it's working.
How much they pay you for that, you shill?
Sponsor us,
Nothing.
please.
Yeah. You sounded like Dylan's opponents.
Dude, we
from
could
the
get
classic on the weekend.
we could get a Buckley sponsorship and hand it out at GPs and be like, sick play, bro.
You look like you need this.
Oh man. Yeah. It just reminded me you're defeated. Yeah. Reminded me of Dylan's opponents at the classic. Just every time somebody lost to John. Just like yeah. Dylan would be like, flip my Huntmaster. He'd just groan and be like, yeah. It's like,
So good.
dude, it was unreal, man. Like it was the highlight of the weekend for me was at SCG Syracuse was watching Dylan play John in the classic where he missed top 8. Like he was close.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I think he finished 6-2. Like had he not lost in round 7, or I think was what it was, or something, he would have been fine. He would have drawn in. But it was close, and there was one or two people who snuck in at 6-2, and he was close. Yeah, but anyway, it was so funny. Like he played against Jarvis, and it was probably the sweetest, most ridiculous thing I've seen in a Magic tournament in a while. Dylan did not bring any dice. He's playing John. Okay.
Yeah.
Liliana's Ren and 6.
Yep.
You know. He plays a Ren and 6 and just goes and doesn't ask, just reaches across the table and takes a die from Jarvis, right? And then plays with Liliana. And he's like, yeah, resolves. And he's like, cool, can I borrow another die? The guy's like, I can't believe you're playing that deck with no dice of your own. And he's like, so I can borrow a die then. Dude, it was so obnoxious. I was like, wow, you're a jerk, you know? Like, but he was like, I didn't have any dice. Like, what do you want from me? You know? And he just pounded him. And he goes to sign the slip. He's like, I guess if I had to, and every opponent just did this. They're like, I guess I should have.
It's so
and then
fair,
they just
right?
groan in like, you know what I mean? And then just sign the slip. Like one opponent was just friendly, all matched. They're talking about, you know, what's going on and whatever. And then just him you, goif, you know, turn 2, like him you, turn 3, him you, turn 4, double goif, and just beat him down. That was a game. And his opponent just doesn't even say anything, just signs the slip and goes, just so destroyed, man. That was so funny. Just like people losing to John gets so rankled. They're like,
Oh, man.
I can't believe you're playing this deck. You know what I mean? just getting pounded. It was awesome, man.
Oh, man, that makes me so happy.
Dude, it was so funny to watch. And Dylan's losses, by the way, are like hilarious. He got turn 1 by Doomsday.
But Doomsday. People still play that.
Dude, some guy Doomsday. Like I was like, what year is this? When he's telling me, you know, it's like tournament. He's like, yeah, one of my only losses was to Doomsday. I'm like, what is it, 2009? Like, how is this possible? He's like, oh, it's really good now. It has Jace, you know, Jace 4, the static ability.
Oh, Wielder. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. The one that has what's the creature that they used to use for that?
Lab Maniac.
Yeah, Lab Maniac. Yeah. So it has the Lab Maniac text, right? But anyway, yeah. And I can't remember his other loss. I think it was a close match versus 4 color or something like that. But anyway, pretty funny.
That's amazing.
We're just watching people groan as they get hemmed, you know, and they lose both their lands. You know? And they're like on the play and they just don't have a second land drop now. Just so stupid.
So let's talk a little bit about SCG Syracuse. You went down with Dylan, who was on the guest on the show last week. How'd your main event go?
My main event went horrible. I think, my deck list was maybe 4 or 5. I think actually 6. I counted. I think it's 6 card choices off the winning list in the main. But the thing is, there's only one major card I should have had in my list that was different, really. And otherwise, we played essentially the same creature suite, same planeswalkers. He played another Abrupt Decay over me, which I think is a big deal because in the mirror, Abrupt Decay is the best card, right? It kills, Ren and 6, everything basically that they have. Post board, it kills Leovold, without getting countered. It's really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty good. But the one card I also brought and then forgot at the hotel room that I was going to play was Tyrant Scorn. And the reason for this is that you sort of need this card to beat Depths, because how else? If you look at this guy's deck list, it's just Liliana's Triumph and Tyrant Scorn.
Yeah,
that can beat a 2020, and it has a bad Depths matchup. And I played against Depths 4 times. I can't remember exactly.
Jeez.
But I played against lands and or Depths 4 or 5 times. I think if you combine the two of them, 5. And then I played the mirror 3 times. Sorry.
Jesus.
And then I played Reanimator once. That was my tournament. It was the strangest Legacy tournament I've ever played. I played against 3 decks.
Wow.
Which is super unusual. Even the percentage-wise, if you look at the metagame breakdown, that's ridiculous, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's strange that you didn't play against any Delver decks.
I didn't play against a single Delver deck.
That's
And it was the
Most
biggest
played deck.
Yeah, most.
I
played deck.
didn't play against it once.
Wow.
So I feel like I got kind of unlucky because I just kept getting paired against lands and depths. And the matchup's really bad. Game 1, post-board, it's a little better, but it's still not great.
Yeah.
So I just think I got some rough pairings. Like, had I played against Delver all day, I think I would have done very well. I didn't lose to the mirror, which I was pretty proud of. I think that's always a moment of pride to not lose to the mirror. It's
Yeah.
a skill-based, mirror.
Got to
I feel
flex
like.
your big brain on some people.
Yeah, I feel like I played the mirror very well. So I was pretty happy with that. Yeah. I can't remember for sure if I played lands and depths combined 4 or 5 times or the mirror 3 or 4 times. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
somewhere in there, but those were and then in round 9 I played Reanimator. That's the only thing I know. And I lost horribly. After he went all in on turn 1, pitched every single card, used every single card in his hand, and I force willed him. So he had 1 land in play and no cards in hand, and I lost that game.
You love to see it.
Because it was game 1.
Yeah.
And I think he melted 6, but I had no pressure. And he already had his stuff in the yard, and he just top decked Reanimate and killed me. Just I don't know. What am I supposed to do here?
Nothing else you could have done.
Yeah, I mean,
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just top decks Reanimate, and I'm like, yep.
Yep.
And then I puts a Grizzlebrand into play, and that's it. I'm like, okay, yeah,
Mhm.
So I don't know. I feel I had some critiques of the deck. I think this guy had to have gotten very lucky to win. I don't think 4-color control's that great.
I mean, so this guy went undefeated on day 1.
Yeah.
First seed going in the top 8 and just smashed everybody. So, I mean, after how you did with the deck and playing with it and seeing how well it performed in the hands of this guy, like, where do you fall on the deck now?
No, I think the deck's fine. I think I got unlucky on pairings, and again, there's probably 5 or 6 card choices I would make different. Funny enough, we had essentially the same sideboard. We both played the crop rotation Caracas package in the sideboard for depths to help depths and lands. It just gets wastelanded and then you lose anyway a turn or 2 later. But I guess that never happened to him. But that's the only thing that happened to me. We both had Ancient Grudges, which I thought was cool because not a lot of people probably came packing with Ancient Grudge, and it was very good. And I had a bunch of Pyro and Hydroblast as well. We have almost exactly the same sideboard. And I thought my sideboard was quite strong. I was pretty happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is the main, I should have had a Tyrant Scorn or 2. I think 2 Tyrant Scorn.
Well, yeah, against the lineup you played against, probably would have been good.
I also just don't think it's ever really bad in Legacy because in the mirror you just pick up your Snapcasters or your Baleful Strix or whatever. Like it can save your Plague Engineer against True Name decks. When they go to Swords it or something like that, or Bolt it, you can just pick it up and replay it, and they can just never safely play their True Names. So yeah, I wish I had it. But apart from that, I don't know. I still feel like he got very lucky to win. Like for example, versus the Storm opponent in the finals, he had no right winning that game.
No.
Or that match, actually. No right.
Yeah, that if you haven't seen that match, I would go back and watch it because it was entertaining, let me tell you. But you're right. The 4-color control player did get crazy lucky.
Yeah.
And his opponent punted in the most horrible way.
It was rough.
To throw away game 1.
It was really rough, yeah.
But
I think Storm is actually well positioned. I was saying that I hoped I didn't play against Storm. I just wanted to play against Delver decks all weekend, and I thought if I do, I'm good. Like I don't see how I lose to blue-red Delver or something like that.
yeah, I mean, looking at the metagame breakdown, I think you made the right choice for wanting to, if you were picking a deck to smash Delver all weekend, it was the most played deck in the room. You just didn't play against it.
Yeah, and that happens.
Yeah.
That's just magic. Like, pairings didn't, to win a tournament, you have to have your pairings line up on top of being lucky. So,
Yeah.
it's okay. I will say, one of the card differences we have is that the control deck has a Veil of Summer in their sideboard, which I think is amazing. And I wish I would have had that because it blanks their Tendrils of Negation turn when they try and storm you. It's just a 1 mana. Okay, so of note, Veil of Summer is actually busted out of control.
Oh, I know.
That card is so insane. It's just 1 mana Cryptic Command, right?
Yeah, it's a 1 mana. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say 1 mana cantrip and counterspell.
It's just Cryptic for
it's
1
just-
green.
yeah.
It's so busted. The stuff I saw people doing with it in Legacy, I was like, oh my God, this card's insane.
Mm.
I got blown out by it. I tried to ultimate, in testing versus Ron. I tried to ultimate a Liliana. Yeah. Just lose
Yeah.
my Lily,
It leads to some pretty nasty blowouts.
Oh yeah, it's nuts. I got blowout of the week too, so remind me.
We'll save that till the end.
Yeah, we'll save it. But it was fun. Even though I got smashed by depths a few times, I think it was my own fault in card choices. Well, not even fault. I literally just forgot my cards. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so I just had to play some other stuff. But even then, my pairings got kind of unlucky. Also, what a world, hey? Elves top 8'd.
Yeah.
How many Plague Engineers at Maine were in the room? Hundreds,
So many.
right?
Yeah. I don't know. El's still good, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
I mean,
legacy.
When you think about it, though, they can just go faster than a Plague Engineer can come down. They could theoretically just kill you before it matters if they're on the play.
Yeah, that's true.
It does kill you before that even matters. So, and they can recover. Elves is actually a pretty resilient deck. Not to a Plague Engineer, but yeah. I mean, Legacy is just about pairings and all these things too. So it matters a lot because it's just such a diverse field. But yeah, I had a lot of fun. I thought the games were still very skill testing and I got to make a lot of decisions. Unfortunately, against some matchups, your decisions don't matter if you play well, which feels bad, but it's still a fun tournament. I'm just happy every time I get to play Legacy.
Yeah.
I took the second day off playing the Classic. I decided not to play just because I wanted to buy and sell some cards and do some trading that I wanted to get done. And I knew I just wouldn't get around to it. I'd rather just get cards in America, which is what I kind of wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked out pretty well. And then just kind of got food and coffee for Dylan and Ron who were playing in the Classic.
Sweet.
Ron played Jeskai Miraculous Miracles.
Okay.
It was pretty good, actually. So
what,
he
Jeskai Real World.
yeah. He could have top 8'd actually the Classic if he had taken a different line, I think, in this one critical turn versus Delver that he ended up losing the match because of it. And I think he needed to take a different line. I think this is actually a good lesson actually for people who play Legacy. He just brainstormed and played his 4th land and passed instead of playing his Narset or his Teferi that were in hand. And the problem is he then on his opponent's turn tried to use a removal spell to kill a Dreadhorde Arcanist, which then got forced. He fought over it, got dazed, and then that's the game. The Dreadhorde Arcanist just ran away with the game, right? I was trying to say that I think to beat Delver decks, one of the things you need to do is try and use your threats proactively to force them to answer. Because if it's a tempo, quote unquote, deck, whatever that means, they want to be using their counter magic to make sure their threats are protected. And so anytime you can proactively start playing threats that they have to answer, it means that by the time you try and fight over killing their one important creature they have out, you have a better chance of winning the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't do that and lost. I will say Magmatic Sinkhole looked awesome in Legacy in that deck. Super good. Kills
That card
Jace.
kills a lot of stuff.
It kills Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Kills creatures. It's cost 1, because you're just delving, no problem for that deck, right?
Yeah. I was playing a copy in Izzet Phoenix for a while, and it was really good.
Yeah, card was. I thought it was awesome. I was really impressed by it, and so that's what he was playing, and I thought it was really good. Although I had a really hilarious brain fart, I guess, at one point when I was watching him play. In my head, I was like, "What are you doing? Just Magmatic Sinkhole that thing," and that was something that was on the board. And for 5 minutes, I just kept being like, "Man, what is wrong with Ron? Just cast that Magmatic Sinkhole." And then I realized, oh yeah, it's not Hogak. You can't cast it from the graveyard. He'd already casted it. But my brain is so tired and just shut off that I thought for a second that all Delve cards can act like Hogak. And I was like, oh yeah, wait. And I realized, I was like, I didn't say anything because I was just watching his match.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, right. That's not all Delve cards have to just be cast from their graveyard like Hogak. Oh yeah.
The Magic community is just permanently scarred by that card's existence.
I was like, man, am I not smart in the league? I was so embarrassed. I told Ron as soon as the match finished, I was like, man, in my head, I was like, man, you are so dumb. Like, you know what I mean? Flaming him. And then I realized I told Noah a story of like my inner monologue that was like, wait, woof.
Yikes.
Doctor, by the way. But like, dude, it was so, yeah. But I was really impressed by it. But yeah, I think that's an important tip for playing against Delver. If you just let them play their game where they just use counter magic on, your removal spells, you're going to lose. You have to force them to interact with your threats.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you've played decks like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Where, you don't want to have to daze or force their creature. You want to protect your own. That's all you really want to do. So,
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that was a pretty fun tournament. SCGs are run super well, too, I always find. Did get a weird judge call, but had some weird ones.
It happens.
Yeah, it happens.
All right, well, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're bringing back a topic from this time last year where we talked about some cards in sets that are surviving rotation that maybe are sleepers or maybe saw a little bit of play at the beginning of Standard and then kind of fell off to the wayside.
Yeah, this topic itself is a bit of a sleeper. It gets better every time there's a rotation, but otherwise we don't talk about it.
It's a comeback.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've picked out some cards we like from War of the Spark, Guilds of Ravnica, Ravnica Allegiance, and Core 2020 that we think have a shot come Throne of Eldraine Standard.
Yeah, so we picked both ones that, saw play and then maybe fell off. So we're going to talk a little bit about comeback cards. And then also, cards that were sleepers that never really got to see play for various reasons and various interactions, probably just due to power level, that now that the power level is going to go down a lot, it always is in small Standard. I mean, we look back at something like Doom Whisperer. This is a good example, where this card was a, $30 Standard card all over the place, surveil decks with a disinformation campaign, right? All these things, gone. Because eventually the format sped up and they were too slow and clunky.
Yeah.
But are we, so these are things that I think we can talk about at first as far as comebacks, right? I mean, do the surveilled, they're still there. Thought Erasure into disinformation campaign is still there. I mean, Doom Whisperer, this is a powerful package of cards that is worth considering. I don't know how you'd port it or what needs to change or what new additions, but it's something worth considering. Those are always packages worth considering for comebacks. I think that's
You know what card plays really well with disinformation campaign and Thought Erasure? Drown in the Lock.
Yeah, it would. You're right.
Yeah.
There you go. That's probably all you need to turn that card on.
Maybe. I don't know. I think
those are
by that card,
all reasonable interactions, though, worth thinking about, worth trying. These are all things that over the next 2 weeks, I'm sure we'll get to testing.
Yeah. But to kick this thing off with some cards that we think are primed for a comeback, the big daddy dragon himself, Niv Mizzet. That card ruled Guilds of Ravnica Standard.
Sorry, excuse me. Which Niv Mizzet? There are two in Standard, sir.
The 2-color one. Ruled Guilds of Ravnica Standard, my friend. Yeah, Niv Mizzet. That card has completely disappeared. Just
Gone.
Much too slow. But
I mean, Teferi doesn't help.
Yeah, Teferi still doesn't help, for sure. But this card ruled small set Standard for a reason.
Oh, it was powerful. If you didn't have an answer, the game was over immediately.
And especially now when people are going to be trying to figure out new decks, like generally at the start of a format, aggro decks are king, generally taking advantage of a lot of people doing slower, clunky things with their mana. But once the format kind of figures itself out and we move past these hyper aggro decks, I think Niv Mizzet is real prime to just come in and be the king.
Niv Mizzet has multiple times impressed me with how much of a plague wind Chemister's Insight is.
Yeah.
Dude, so I've been playing a lot of Temur Reclamation in Standard 2020 on Arena.
Yeah, we started playing it when we were streaming on Saturday.
And I had one game in particular I remembered. My opponent's playing Abzan. I have a Reclamation in play, and I play a Niv Mizzet. Untap my lands, pass to my opponent. My opponent casts a 4-mana Sorin, and he has 3 creatures in play. 2 of them have 4 toughness, and the other has 2. He casts his Sorin and tries to despark my Niv Mizzet, and I wiped his entire board
Yeesh.
with 6 mana.
How?
It was a combination of like a shock, a Chemister's Insight, and another shock, and just killed everything. He didn't even activate his Sorin.
Wow.
Yeah. It can do some pretty messed up stuff.
Yeah, side note, that's another like play thing that gets people occasionally. Like cast your Planeswalker when you're ready to immediately use it, so your opponent can't respond.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like he cast it and then immediately tried to despark, and I was like, "Oh man, let's do
Whoops.
it."
Yeah,
Let's
I don't
go.
know about that one. That's wild.
He got to despark my Niv Mizzet, but I got to untap with my Reclamation and immediately won because I drew
you had,
like
like, 9
4
cards in hand,
cards
yeah.
by killing everything.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good.
Well, and one of the next cards on our list actually pairs well with Niv Mizzet. It's a card that always sort of saw play with Niv Mizzet, which is Expansion Explosion, which there's a lot of ways to use this card. I mean, there were hints of the Ral Zarek Conduit of Storms deck, right? That kind of combos with Expansion Explosion.
Mm-hmm.
This card is just incredibly powerful, especially in decks like Temur Reclamation. That's a deck that I think, you might be right, is poised for a very powerful comeback. If you recall back to Guild's Standard, that deck was insane.
Yeah, my win rate with Temur Reclamation in Standard 2020 is absurdly high. Like, crazy. You've killed so many people with Niv expansion, just Reclamation expansion. I've Ral comboed, killed people a bunch of time with a double expansion, which is like super sweet.
Yeah.
I really think something is there with that archetype because it's already kind of fleshed out in the way that we've seen it before. We know it's good. Having Flame Sweep is a huge boon for the deck.
Oh,
That card answers a lot of your problems.
Oh, especially if you can copy it with Ral. You can even get something, you can get bigger creatures. Yeah.
And a lot of people are trying out, Risen Reef, Field of the Dead decks, and you just completely, what they're doing doesn't matter when you have Flame Sweep.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. Yeah, that's a good point.
It buys you so much time, and then you just kill them with any one of your endgame finishers. But
So any one of your Niv Mizzets.
yeah, or cast an explosion for 25,
Yeah, that
or
was pretty good. I was playing it. I played it a couple times after our stream in Standard 2020, and I got paired against like Mono Blue Mill. So Niv draws a lot of cards, and they were milling me a lot, and it ended up that I had like 9 cards left in my library, and they were at 17 or something, so I could like just barely like draw 8 with expansion and dome them for 8, and the one off like Niv to like kill them with one like barely had enough cards left in my library.
And so thinking about decks that are going to be popular post rotation, I think one deck on a lot of people's mind is the Simic Flash deck. It's been super popular in the 2020 event. It doesn't really lose much of anything. I think the deck actually gets a lot better.
I agree.
With Throne of Eldraine. And you know what card that deck can never beat? Niv Mizzet. Ever.
If you're
in a million years,
you're
they
behind,
just cannot beat that card.
Yeah.
You cast it, they're dead.
If they can't attack around it like that turn, you can like untap and wrath them.
Yeah, you just kill their entire board and they never do anything again.
Exactly.
And it feels great casting Niv Mizzet. And
You just got to resolve it. That's the hard part.
It can't be countered.
Can't counter.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, my God.
They cannot
I forgot
beat it.
about that text on it.
You literally just keep a hand with that card in your hand and they die.
My bad. I totally forgot. Wow, that card is so busted. In my head, it's just whenever you cast, you draw, and then whenever you draw, you deal 1. That's all. This is a 5/5 flyer. That in my head, I'm like, oh, wait, that thing just has way more text.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, whole.
It's great when you cast it and your like Simic Flash opponent just like kind of tanks for a bit and they start roping and then like it resolves and then end of turn they like Frilled Mystic you as a 3/2.
Yeah, whole. Yeah, my bad. That's actually nuts. Okay, yeah. That's a good info for listeners, if they're looking for cards that can get around that. I mean, that's really good.
Yeah, really a lot. Every game I've played against Simic Flash with the Niv Mizzet Reclamation deck, the moment I realize they're on Flash on like turn 2, my whole game plan is like, okay, just play lands until I cast Niv Mizzet. And then usually the turn goes 1 turn cycle and they concede after it's in play.
Yeah, because also they probably aren't just throwing away, you know what I mean? They're not just going to cast a naked Frilled Mystic on 4 to put you under pressure because they're just not thinking about that, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
If they took a turn off where they just didn't also cast anything, it's probably over. And you also just have removal that actually interacts with their
like their
creatures pretty well.
Their Brineborn Cutthroats don't ever really untap because you play shocks.
Yeah.
So you have ways to deal with the early pressure.
Yeah.
And then the rest of their game is 4 mana cards, which sure they could get a hit in
One or
with,
two.
but like if you're growth spiraling into Niv Mizzets, like
You'll get them.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
We'll get you eventually.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
That's really cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely think there's something there. That core of cards, Niv Mizzet, Expansion Explosion, Wilderness Reclamation, which I mean everybody knows busted.
Growth Spiral.
Growth Spiral, yeah. And then I do think Ral, Storm's Conduit, is prone to do something well. Because I mean that card, yeah, it costs 4 mana, but it comes down with a lot of loyalty on it.
Yeah, it does.
And copying some spells in this deck is just
And it's
crazy.
also a deck where you're looking for certain pieces in certain matchups. So the Scry is relevant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
totally.
Yeah, definitely think that's good.
And notably, the Teamer mana base is one that has access to 2 Scry lands.
Yeah.
Which are both base blue,
Yes.
which is what you want to be anyway.
Yeah.
So it's, kind of a lot of pieces fall into place for this kind of strategy. Moving on to another card on the list, Midnight Reaper is a card that saw a lot of play in green-black mid-range during Gil's Ravnica Standard again, and then as sort of a mirror breaker.
Yeah, it just accrued so much value in the mirror. Remember when we started playing it in the mirror and we were just all like, oh my God, this card is just dominant in the mirror.
Yeah, because I mean, early versions of the deck didn't have it, but then the deck became super popular because it was pretty clearly one of the best, if not the best decks in the format. And then Midnight Reaper just gave you a huge one-up in the mirror match.
Yeah.
But notably now,
it combos in a different way. It's slotting into a different archetype, which I think is interesting.
With its creature type notably being a zombie knight being a pretty pushed creature type in this new set, I think it's prone to be slotted into a lot of aggressive knight decks.
Yeah,
Give
you
you
can
a way to
refuel.
Refuel and push into the late game if you have to. If your opponent is 1-for-1ing you, or if they wrath your board, you immediately refuel and can keep going. It's definitely a super powerful card that I mean we haven't seen in forever.
Haven't seen it anywhere in sides or mains for quite some time. However, I think it's definitely worth mentioning because it's just in a completely different position now. Like it will be played in different archetypes, like different styles of decks than just mid-range grindy decks. It's going to be played in decks that are these aggressive decks trying to, I did see play in aristocrats decks, right? Red-black sack decks or Mardu aristocrats as, again, a value engine. But I think just as a knight, it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the perfect kind of card to slot into these aggressive decks because a lot of the time the format goes to mid-range decks to try and fight these aggro decks. You go a little bigger, creatures you can't really attack through profitably, and you try and 1-for-1 them out and just outgrind them, where this card gives you access to more cards, allow you to fight through that.
Yeah.
So
it's also going to be kind of nice alongside, like for the reasons you've been mentioning, but alongside something like Worthy Knight, where your turn 2 and 3 plays are both sort of must kills. And like a lot of hands your opponents keep won't have 2 answers or 2 clean answers for those.
Yeah, I mean, even you also still get to play the 1 mana, order the Ebon Legion, right? Knight of the Ebon Legion.
Yeah.
You have a lot of 1 and 2 threats that are really scary. And then they have Midnight Reaper too to follow up. If you start killing things, if you wrath them, it's wrath protection in a knight deck, right? Tribal decks historically auto lose to wrath. You play an elf deck, you play a merfolk deck in standard, any of these tribal decks in standard, they just lose to wrath, right? That's always just, that's how it goes. There's no really way around it for tribal decks because of how they're constricted in their build. They have to be built that way, that they need, they need to all be on the board to create the synergy and power that they have on their own. They're not that great, but Midnight Reaper is just an auto protection for your sort of knight strategy for you to refuel and then just dump your whole hand because presumably you've made land drops at that point. It's easier for you to sort of dump your hand. So yeah, I definitely think it's a super well positioned card. It kind of actually goes really well even in the deck, two of the cards above it on the list that we were talking about, which are the Molder Hulk Ozoni decks. Midnight Reaper fits into this deck too. Like I think Midnight Reaper is poised to be, seeing a decent amount of play.
Yeah, Molder Hulk Ozoni is 2 cards that I really wanted to be good.
Oh, yeah, you played a lot of Molder Hulk.
I loved those cards.
Hey,
I had a lot of fun playing those cards.
A lot of people did early. I think Molder Hulk is still Molder Hulk and the only downside is we're losing that land from Dominaria.
Yeah, you don't have the Memorial the Folly Molder Hulk combo anymore.
But I mean, it's still really powerful.
And there are a lot of really good utility lands that are coming out in this new set, which you would love to bring back from your graveyard with Molder Hulk. Also, there's a lot of good graveyard cards in general, like some really good enablers, really good reanimator spells like that Cauldron.
Yeah.
So I think graveyard strategies are bound to be revisited come Throne of Eldraine, and these are two pretty good end game cards for that strategy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Another dynamic duo, and one of the last ones I think we were talking about on our comeback list is probably God Eternal Oketra plus Vivian, Champion of the Wilds, the 3-mana flash Vivian.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Teferi still an issue, but perhaps probably not as dominant as it has been, I think.
Yeah, it really depends.
It depends on a lot. We don't know.
Yeah.
No one can say.
It sure does really depend.
Yeah.
But God Eternal Oketra is an incredible. We know how incredibly powerful this card is.
Yeah, you untap with that, you're winning.
Yep. Yeah. Any Fairmat, any mirror without Wraths, game's over.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're going to win. Vivian, also a card that creates a ton of value, puts opponents under a lot of pressure. Just finding cards. It's cheap. It comes down. I think the loss of Elvish Mystic hurts Vivian a lot because your best starts were
Learn War Elves into turn 2 Vivian.
But Oketra, I think, still remains as a very threatening card.
I mean, you still do have outs to play it on turn 2 with Gilded, the Golden Goose. Or,
the Goose.
Yeah.
The loose goose, whatever. Food everywhere.
Yeah, but God Eternal Oketra is just one of those cards that I feel like is prone to do well in early standard while people are still, figuring stuff out. And this is just a game-ending card that is super hard to kill.
It feels like Scarab God, right?
Yeah.
It feels like a card that's like Scarab God.
Yeah, I mentioned this because I was playing it a bit in like that Abzan Bola Citadel deck that I played at the beginning of some standard format.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mentioned that like it does, for a 5-drop, it does feel like Scarab God. There's a sort of shocking similarity between 4/4 zombies and 4/4 zombies. So it reminds you a lot of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. There's probably some other comeback cards we're not thinking of that saw a decent amount of play, but yeah, we mentioned a lot. And I think these are cards that you should definitely reconsider that have completely fallen off the map, that their power level is just obviously very high. And it just didn't shake out that way in standard.
Yeah, if there's anything else that like had its weekend or had its 2 or 3 weeks in standard and then, new cards or whatever sort of pushed it out, maybe it could push back in.
Yeah, but also I think one of the things we want to talk about was cards that didn't see any play.
Yeah, cards that either saw a tiniest amount of play right at the start when people were trying it out and then completely were forgotten about.
But I think are obviously powerful. So we kind of have a list of cards that we think are just their power level so high. It's unclear whether, they just line up. That's how Magic works, that it's impossible to say, oh, this card for sure will see play. But I think there's a long list of cards that are in the previous 3 sets, that are going to be in the standard that are worth considering in your brewing as first steps.
Yeah, they just kind of got lost in the craziness that is 8-set standard.
Yeah.
Cards that either never saw too much use or they sort of lurked around the tier 3 list, sometimes in arena decks, sometimes wherever. But
to start this one off, Spawn of Mayhem, 3-mana 4/4 flyer. This card's huge and it hasn't seen really any play.
Basically any. And this card snowball. I have lost to it on occasion. I'm sure you have too, right? Just once in a blue moon. It snowballs out and there's nothing you don't draw something for it and you're dead very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is a card that was in the second place deck from Twitch Rivals this past week, and it also was in the first place deck from Fandom Legends.
That's a big deal.
It's aggressive, and being aggressive at the start of a new format is a place you generally want to be because people are doing weird, clunky things. No one knows what's going on, and if you can just kill people fast, you're generally in a right spot. And this card kills people really fast.
Oh yeah, Spawn of Mayhem that's an aggro card, and I think this card is extremely powerful, and I think in small set standard, it's definitely poised to stomp.
And there's potential new enablers for it as well. There's that red-black knight, Stormbringer Knight or something.
Yeah.
On your upkeep, each player loses a life. And so that just enables this thing's turn 3 spectacle cost.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Like that's actually nuts.
Yeah, because if you can play this thing on turn 3, it then enables all its other copies to be 3 mana so that you can start having very efficient turns. Yeah. A flock, a spawn of mayhems is.
Yeah. Mana mechanics, am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Spectacles and mana mechanic. Ban it.
Yeah. Next on this list might slot into a similar deck. Well, actually, I'll talk about all these cards that kind of all go together. Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Dreadhorde Butcher, Mayhem Devil.
With Chandra 3, the one that creates the 2 elemental tokens. This
Yes.
is a sort of shell that is scary, I think. It's one that I have been mentioning throughout the last 6-8 months. Remember, I was testing it for someone, one of our Discord users, and he sent me a list, and I was testing it. And I messaged you guys, and I said, I think this guy's deck is actually nuts. Like, there's some changes I would make, but I think this deck is actually really good. It's just so close.
It's very close. I've played against it, and I think maybe I might have, not as much as you, but I might have played that same list a bit. And yeah, it has turns where it just leaves you wondering, why haven't people been doing this?
Yeah. Again, these cards go into an aggressive strategy, which is good for week 1.
Yeah.
And I mean, Priest of the Forgotten Gods is just stone unbeatable if you can't answer it.
And the creature matchups, yeah. If they're playing a creature deck, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
They will just grind you into the dirt, and it will feel like nothing you do matters. I've done it to people in the creature. I remember when the Oketra Vivian deck was popular. That's when I was testing this deck for this Discord user, and I smashed them every time. And I never lost that matchup, and I played it nonstop. And the reason was because of Priest, And then the deck actually got better with Chandra 3.
Yeah.
Because you sack those elemental tokens to Priest. That's just the value there is just through the roof.
And you get to play good aggressive 1-drops like Knight of the Ebon Legion as well. Like cards that are proven to be good.
So this deck got new tools, didn't lose any, but every other deck lost tools, right? This deck is in a very good position.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest downside to this deck right now is this color combination lost Dragon Skull Scummit. So your best, you have to kind of play tap lands.
Yeah, the mana's rougher, for sure.
And you don't really want any of your first 3 lands to come into play on tapped. Yeah. Which is the one thing I'll say about this strategy. But I mean, Dreadhorde Butcher, Priest of the Forgotten Gods, Spawn of Mayhem, these are all must-answer cards.
I mean, Mayhem Devil with Chandra 3 is just...
yeah, and I mean, Mayhem Devil is a card that kind of just pushes you over the edge, but, it's not going to kill you just straight up. Has a 3-mana 3/3, but Dreadhorde Butcher, if you just leave that card on the table,
on its own, it kills
it's running away,
You know what else is great?
Same with Knight of the Ebon Legion. These are both cards that scale as, you know what I mean? If an opponent stumbles, misses land drops, both Dreadhorde Butcher and Knight of the Ebon Legion are going to end the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an obvious inclusion in this deck when you start brewing it, but these are just Rankle's friends.
You're real high on Rankle.
I am, especially in this archetype. It plays so well. Early game, you need to control the board. You sack Chandra tokens to Rankle. Late game, they're at 6, and you have a 6/6 Dreadhorde Butcher. You sack that and burn them out.
Yeah, no, that's actually reasonable as a top end. You still play Judith if you want. If some lists don't, as you mentioned, the ones from
the Twitch Rivals list notably didn't play Judith,
which seems wild. But
But yeah, you watch the deck in practice.
Judith isn't actually the reason the deck's good, though, right? In a lot of times in the mirror, it's very good. Don't get me wrong. Judith is very powerful, but you don't need it to win.
No, the one card that really just stood out above and beyond as one of the best cards on the deck was Priest of the Forgotten Gods. That card was just unbelievably good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 2-drop creature that draws you theoretically an extra card every turn once you start going. If they're playing a creature deck, they're
draws
in the
you
abyss.
An extra card, ramps you, and kills your opponent's creatures.
And they're in the abyss. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they lose life too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Mayhem Devil kind of
it does everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think against control decks, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But control decks just don't see that much play in the early formats, I feel.
Yeah, they're generally not a good strategy to go to because you're not really sure what to expect. And control decks do better in a known metagame.
Yeah, no doubt.
I still think, though, that if you're brewing this red-black list to begin with, because of, as we've said, it's so powerful against other creature strategies that you can bring 10, 11 cards in your sideboard for control. Chandra 3 flashing back Duress. It's pretty hard for control decks to deal with.
Yeah, you have a lot of options. And also you have such a weird sort of strategy of attacking them that, Dreadhorde Butcher starts to become awkward for them. Chandra puts them under a lot of pressure, not just from Duress, but just the elementals, right? I mean,
that too.
So you actually, post board, you should be fine. This is a deck actually that surprisingly for a red-black deck has a lot of game. They can do a lot of things. You could board into Midnight Reapers in the sideboard. I mean, there's lots of options for this deck. I think you're right. I think it's very powerful. It's a deck that I've been high on actually for a long time. I think it was almost there.
Yeah. So next up on our list, we have the finale cycle from War of the Spark. And, a couple of these cards have seen, inklings of play.
Yeah, like Finale of Promise is nuts.
Yeah.
The red one is absurd. I mean, it saw tons of standard play. We don't need to, and the Finale of Devastation, the green one in Modern, is really powerful.
Yeah. But more so, Finale of Eternity, Finale of Revelation, Finale of Glory. These are cards like Finale of Glory had a bit of showing in band ramp strategies and War of the Spark standard. But the other two, aside from, 4-color Dreadhorde playing Finale of Eternity in its sideboard for a bit when that deck was popular, we haven't really seen any of these.
And they're incredibly powerful. I was playing around. You probably remember me sending you screenshots playing around with Finale of Revelation in what was the ley line? The green ley line, Abundance?
Yeah.
I remember I was playing around with Finale of Revelation ramp Abundance decks, and I think I sent you a screenshot where I turn 3'd Finale of Revelation for 10 plus.
Yeah.
And then the game's over.
Yeah.
Right? The game, it does not, that's the game. You have no maximum hand size. You just draw your whole deck, do whatever you want, the card is just unbelievably powerful. The fact that it also shuffles in your graveyard was absurd for me. So yeah, because you risk drawing your entire deck, so you kind of need to get some stuff back. But this is a card that's obviously powerful to me. I think it's draw X is draw X is usually a pretty good.
Yeah.
So it just depends how it lines up. If RAM strategies can still exist, which I think they can. RAM strategies. Circuitous Route's still there. Growth Spiral's still there.
Nissa's not going anywhere.
She's still around.
Yeah, Nissa's what enables these sort of insane starts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these big haymakers are generally a lot better in smaller set standards as well, with less powerful cards floating around, right? So I think we're bound to see a little bit more of them. Finale of Eternity is a card that I think is mostly a sideboard card.
I agree.
For its time and standard, but I think it is one that we'll see a lot more of going forward.
Yeah. I think we even see Command the Dreadhorde come back in bigger numbers, things like that. Yeah, the standard is still going to be wild. I think that's one of the things is that Ravnica as a block, right? The sets were so powerful. The cards like Nissa, Tameo, all these cards are going to still dominate the format.
Yeah.
But
they're keeping on track with printing super powerful cards with Throne of Eldraine. There's some crazy ones.
Oh, we'll get to those next week, right?
Yeah, we'll get to those next week in our top 10. But
and then Finale of Glory is just a card that, creating X creatures has also always been a strong finisher for certain decks. At times in Standards history, this has been a control finisher. This has been an aggro card. This has been, used all over the place. Mid-range mirror breakers, make X creatures has always been something that numerous decks have been interested in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, notable comparisons from recent memory would be something like, what was it, Secure the Wastes?
Yeah, that card nuts is an instant, though.
That card is an instant, so a little different, but...
I lost to a Finale of Glory recently at instant speed.
Yeah, Teferi.
Teferi.
Yeah.
Good old Teferi.
And it was 410 plus.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I knew my opponent had something. They full swung at me, and they were dead on board otherwise. And then they just had a Nissa in play and plus Teferi in passed. I'm like, I don't know.
I'm dead.
I don't know what this is, but
I'm probably dead.
Attack you with everything. And then there was 11 angels, and I was like, yeah, confirmed, can't beat that.
Moving down on this list, we have 2 utility lands, Karn's Bastion and Mobilized District. Mobilized District saw a little bit of play.
Yeah, in the Super Friends lists, some Knights list played it,
But we haven't really seen it much since Karn's Bastion. I haven't seen really.
You don't see it at all.
I think did that mono
green deck played it.
Tron deck played it.
They played 4 copies.
Yeah.
And I think that is a deck even worth exploring.
Yeah, and these cards not as good when everyone's trying to play these 3-color plus mana bases. The cost of adding a colorless land to your mana base is a lot higher. But now our mana is worse. I think we're going to see a lot. There is more of a push towards monocolor decks
or 2-color.
Yeah, and those type of mana bases can support cards like this.
And I just think that Karn's Bastion plus Nissa is something that, is really powerful. The threat of alting your Nissa fast is really scary, pumping your lands. I also think just any creature land is something always worth considering.
Yeah, and this is a really powerful creature land. And I mean, everyone remembers how powerful Mutavault was in Standard.
It was the best card in Standard for a year straight.
Obviously, this
Not
card
even close.
isn't remotely as powerful as Mutavault, but if you're playing a deck that can support a creature land, you probably should be playing it.
Should be playing 4. I mean, there was a time where Green-Red Stompy, last season during RNA, was playing copies of this 3 to 4. Because it's good Wrath protection. If they have a Planeswalker and then they play a Wrath, you can kill their Planeswalker usually. It helps a lot with things like that. So yeah, no, it's a super powerful card. There's lots of ways to enable it still as well to make it cheaper to activate. Yeah, no, Mobilized District, definitely a card worth considering.
Next up on our list, we have Tolsimir, Friend of Wolves. And I threw this card on the list because there's been a lot of talk about how insane this card interacts with New Garrick, allowing the Garrick tokens to fight immediately when they enter play, and then you get to bump up the loyalty on your Garrick.
That's nuts.
And this card, I mean, it saw sideboard play in Standard. It sees modern play in the 5-color Niv Mizzet deck.
Love to see it.
I don't know why we're talking about it. Clearly an all-star already.
But this is a lot of power across 2 bodies. And for 5 mana, you got 6 power and gaining life.
Exactly. And one of the things you noted, if it was 6 mana, I'd say this is unplayable. But at 5 mana in early formats, where, as you noted, things are generally more aggressive, this helps shore up your aggro matchup really, really well. It does a lot in shoring up the aggro matchups. Like you said, it pairs well with Garrick, so it's getting some synergy there. It came in late Standard and big set standards, right? So it didn't get to see as much play, so it'll be interesting to see how it lines up. But I think it does a lot, even against control. Just 2 bodies is good.
Yeah, it has a lot of text on it that I really like for starting a new
for early
format.
Standard, definitely.
And beyond that, just its interaction alone with one of the best cards in Throne of Eldraine in a color pairing that I think a lot of people are going to move towards already, as Abzan is generally
2 temple mana.
Again, you have your 2 temple mana. Notably, both those temples are base black, which supports Murderous Rider, which is a card that you want to be playing a lot of copies of.
That card's nuts. That's the Hero's Downfall, lose 2 life, and then a lifelink knight on the Adventure card. Yeah, the card's insane.
Yeah, and having your tap lands be base black allows you to cast that card very easily. So I think Tolsimir is bound to see a lot more play.
I agree.
Come new Standard.
I agree. Legendary, so you're only going to be able to play 2 or 3 copies probably, but it's still just so powerful that it's worth it.
The Tolsimir mirrors have got to be weird, right? Like, you play yours, kill something, they play theirs, kill your Tolsimir. They just keep going back and forth, throwing holes
whoever
at each
plays
other.
the first Tolsimir probably gets punished more, right? Because whoever has the Tolsimir left over is better off.
Yeah, exactly. But then you play your second one.
If you have it, yeah.
Sick dogs at each other.
So this next card on the list, this is a card you're kind of high on, right, Adam?
I just like this card. I'm surprised it didn't see more play at times. As a one of, I don't think I'd ever play a second copy, but I definitely think that if you're playing even the deck you're talking about, that's base black, I would consider playing Storav, Div Karen Lich, because it's double black green. And I just think a 4-mana 5/4 trample is already pretty powerful. But if you ever hit, and the fact that it's when it deals damage to planeswalkers too is a big deal to me. This is just a mid-range breaker, right?
Yeah, this is another War of the Spark kind of legendary rare that really just hasn't seen any play at all.
It won a Japanese MCQ actually, which is the only thing it did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know.
You get that one.
Yeah.
But
that's how I found out about it.
It's one of those cards that you read it and obviously there's a lot going on here, but it does have the downside of you have to actually be able to attack with it.
Yeah, I will say that, that it's not an ETB or anything is really risky. And I will say this, that I could be very wrong about this, if only because playing creatures without ETBs in Standard is super risky. However, I think that the threat of this thing as a sort of must answer or will grind you into the dirt is pretty powerful. I think it's worth considering as a one of in these sort of theoretical Abzan mid-range decks that people are talking about with Garrick, Tolsimir. I think this is a good one of the fact that you can go get back these sort of legendary creatures that, Tolsimir you don't want to play 4 copies of, and you want to pick up a Tolsimir and play it again. I think Sturev does a lot of work there.
It's definitely a card that could be the breaker for those sort of mirror matches.
Yeah.
Just going a little bigger than your opponent for sure.
The fact that it also has trample lets you attack, and if they declare blocks, you can use a removal spell on their blocker, and then it'll still trample through, and you'll still get back that creature.
That's insane.
Yeah, I just think that the play pattern of this card can be very powerful and threatening. So,
is there any reasonable ways to give this haste?
No. I thought about it. Yeah.
Well, get this, right? There's that 1 mana red creature, Torch Carrier, right? You sack Torch Carrier to give this haste.
And you get back Torch Carrier.
You attack and you get back your Torch Carrier. You're down no cards.
That's a combo.
Jund, here we go. But I just think the card has a lot of potential value for just as a one-of in Abzan lists. I think it's a card that people just didn't really consider. But I think its text is actually pretty relevant. I think it's a cool card. I like it. And if I was playing Abzan, I would almost always try and find room for 1 copy. That's all I'm saying.
I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
This next card is one that I was super high on when I saw it get spoiled. Dream Eater from Fields of Ravnica.
This card's just objectively powerful. It just didn't line up.
No, but notably now we have no more Lightning Strike in the format. But I mean, there are Chandra's Triumph and there is Jaya's Greeting, which are both 3 damage for 2 mana in red. But those cards don't go face.
Yeah, they're not the same.
So it's very different. And this card, I mean.
Have you cast this card?
Surveil 4 is a lot of, that's a lot of cards.
Essentially, I follow, I can't remember what Magic player said this, that once you scry 2, it's basically draw 1. So, I mean, this is draw 2 as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, in the right decks, it's a draw 4.
Yeah.
Putting things in your graveyard that you're reanimating or doing whatever else with.
Yeah, you can create a ton of value off this card. It's also, so I've played decks that played 4 copies of this card and experimenting around, mainly with the quasi-duplicate deck. Remember that deck? The blue-black quasi-duplicate deck? Also a deck I would consider at the beginning because I think that deck was actually close. When you chain, and the Surveil enables it, when you chain multiple Dream Eaters together, it feels like you're cheating. It's just essentially time walking your opponent over and over, depending on how it lines up. But there are definitely matchups in games where you just slam multiple Dream Eaters and your opponent just can't do anything. They essentially get time walked out of the game.
Yeah, I mean, 4/3 Flyer is not an irrelevant body, and it has a very powerful ETB, which is something you want to be doing. So it checks a lot of boxes for me, and I think this is a card that some bigger blue decks will go towards as a solid finisher now that we're kind of moving into a format without Lightning Strike.
Yeah, I agree. No doubt. The next card I'm iffy about, but I think we included it because it's close.
It's very close. It probably won't see a ton of play for the same reason it hasn't. Not because anything in particular was keeping it out, but just because it's a little bit too expensive. But I mean, it's large, so it's got to be expensive. We're talking about Ravager Worm.
Yeah, it's a weird one because in your red aggressive decks, which is a deck I think you would automatically want this kind of card in, you don't really go above 5 mana generally.
If this card costs 5 mana, it'd be busted out of control.
It would be. Okay,
yeah.
I guess theoretical question. If it had the exact same text, but it was a 5 mana 3/4.
But you could make it a 4/5?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nuts.
Yeah, it'd still be really good.
It's just that it's 6 mana. 6 mana is so much, but if the format works out that green-red sort of Skargan Hellkite, Growth Chamber Guardian can be played, I think this card actually can serve some purpose. There's some lands you might consider hitting.
Yeah.
Ones we talked about.
Notably, the Castle cycle from the new set. Those cards are all just so good.
They're incredibly powerful. And this card being able to hit them is, I think, phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of added this to the list simply because of the power level of those cards, right? Of the castles. Yeah. And this being an answer to them that isn't embarrassing. It's not demolish.
Because we lose Field of Ruin, right?
Yeah, Field of Ruin's gone. And with those castles, I expect to see a lot of them. People are going to play the hell out of those cards for their entirety in Standard. So having a pretty solid answer to them in your deck that kills your opponent as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. And that's sort of the reason is that while this card probably isn't as good as the other ones we've mentioned, it lines up potentially in the metagame in a very interesting way.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's also just very, very fun to cast.
Oh yeah, dude. If you've cast Ravager Worms, it's pretty satisfying.
And the arena animation, just this big mouth coming out of the ground.
It is a sweet animation.
Hey, yeah. Ravager Worms just a sweet card.
Would recommend.
Definitely just sweet.
So next up on our list is, we were really high on this card when I think we put this card in our top 10 actually.
We might have.
During Ravnica
I think maybe it's the only one we missed. Otherwise, we get 9 for 10 or 8 out of 10 on the staples.
Angel of Grace.
This card actually nuts.
Yeah.
It's huge.
I read this card. It's nuts.
It's a 5-mana 5/4 flash flyer. I would consider playing that just if that was the text.
Mm-hmm.
Like a 5-mana 5/4 flash is huge. 5 mana is the sweet spot, I think, for your big bomb creatures that you can justify playing in standard. And the effect on this thing is huge. The fact that you can play multiples is important. You can chain them together. I think this deck has a lot of, this card has a lot of potential.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really threatening. I mean, it kills you in 4 hits.
Yeah, it's a very solid finisher. And I think it would play really well in kind of a blue-white, flash strategy, which I think there are a lot of good cards for a strategy like that are coming out and throwing a Eldraine.
Yeah, and you sort of have built-in protection against aggressive decks, especially with Lightning Strike being gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just one that I think it's just much too powerful to not ever see any play. And I think if it's going to make a breakout, it's probably going to be soon.
Early standard,
yeah,
for sure. Because it's not quite as busted in big standard. But this is a card that I think, in small standard, this card should see play. I think it's very powerful. And people did try when it first came out in RNA. There were decks that experimented with it and played it here and there. So
yeah, it was awkward though, because it fought for its slot with Lyra.
Exactly.
Dawnbringer, which is gone now. And I mean, obviously these cards do very different things, but I think this card in the certain kind of flash strategy I was alluding to, I think this card will play a lot better role now. Notably, if you're playing blue-white flash too, you get to play Teferi, which is,
Hey, that's a plus.
Yeah. Wrapping up our list here, we have the Cavaliers.
In brackets, not green.
Not the green one, though, because that card's nuts.
And RDC sees tons of play.
Yeah.
It's definitely not asleep.
That one's wide awake and stomping people. The green one is, I think, just the best one in standard. It's absurd.
There isn't much discussion to be said on that one, but
it just does so much. The Green Cavalier, the stats are incredible. It has the best stats. It has the best reach is super important for green decks.
Yeah, speaking of people trying to play Angel of Grace,
yeah,
this is a 5/6 reach.
Yeah, so maybe we're wrong.
Yeah,
but the other Cavaliers are just all still quite powerful.
Yeah, so notably, these cards all have a very relevant creature type in Elemental Knight.
Yeah, that's two. Both of them.
Yeah, both
are
of
going to
those
be
are-
relevant.
Yeah, the white one specifically, all of the Knight decks we're going to see are going to have white in them.
Yep.
I think we're going to see white black, we're going to see white red, and we'll probably see Mardu as well.
Oh, for sure, because there's the Mardu Triland, right, for
Yeah,
Knights.
exactly.
That card's insane.
And having an ability like this to deal with a troubling permanent on the other side of the board, turn it into a 3/3, which you probably won't even care about. But also, when it dies, you get to return an artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. There's artifacts and enchantments you're going to be playing in these decks.
Absolutely.
Like Glass Casket, the 2-mana Baffling End. You also have
that card's amazing.
The Circle of Loyalty, which is a card that I think all
the
Knight decks are
legendary
going to play.
artifacts.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ones that check boxes for they're already your removal spells. They do a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There are very relevant artifacts and enchantments you're going to be playing in these decks that, I mean, if they get dealt with, you have a very solid threat here that gets them back if it ever
If they
gets
deal
answered.
with this. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about the blue one still. I don't know.
I think the red one is the one I'm the most doubtful of.
Yeah, the blue one, there's a new fetch line in standard.
There is a fetch line in standard, which that card is going to see a bunch of play.
The blue one is really powerful. But it takes a lot of support,
Yeah. But the black and the white one, I have my eye on.
Definitely. I think definitely you can make a deck where you can really start to abuse the Cavalier of Night. You can really start wrecking people in creature mirrors and really start to go nuts in value creation with that card. I think it's incredibly powerful. So.
Yeah. It really just depends on.
Plays pretty good with Midnight Reaper, right?
Yeah, plays
Sure
very
does.
good with Midnight Reaper. And I mean, it really
That's
also
actually
depends
nuts.
on just how prohibitive these mana bases are. And
Yeah,
It
for
brings
sure.
back Midnight Reaper
Yeah,
too?
it brings back after you can sack it to draw a card and then bring it back.
Ooh.
And then you draw them in multiples. You start sacking them to themselves and getting back Midnight Reapers and start just chaining value. I mean, that's for night decks. That's really good. Gives you a way to grind people out in mid-range mirrors, which, like you said, the Knights decks can play this aggressive game plan, but then also have these sort of cards that put them over the top.
And another point, if, as we expect, it's a sort of more aggressively slanted metagame at the beginning of the format, it just incidentally has lifelink.
yeah,
And
does a lot.
Incidental lifelink is the best kind of lifelink.
So yeah, that wraps up our discussion on all these cards. If you want to pick up any of these cards before Throne of Eldraine comes out, you can head right over to wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. They also have pre-orders for Throne of Eldraine up. Check them out, wizardtower.com. Great sponsor of this podcast.
Free shipping in Canada on singles over $15.
Yeah, they've got their signups for their Throne of Eldraine pre-release are live now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's one Friday during the day now.
Yeah, because they changed the
Oh,
ruling.
that's nuts.
Yeah, they changed the ruling for when
There's
they
like
can
a-
release, I think.
There's like a 3 p.m., 2 or 3 p.m. I can't remember exactly, but there's one Friday afternoon, and then there's also sort of midnight, and then the typical ones over the weekend.
Yeah, awesome. Check them out, wizardtower.com. So we've got a good blowout of the week, which you alluded to earlier in the show. Let's hear it.
Okay, so do you know what the best card in Green Black Depths is in Legacy?
Crop rotation.
Crop Rot, yeah. At a base power level, it's definitely Crop Rot. What's the next best?
Hex Mage.
Yeah, not close. Not close. You know why? I'm going to tell you a story. So my friend Thoughtseize is a guy playing the Perfect Storm, okay? This is a deck that doesn't really play one drops when they change their sideboard if they don't, and they can board in Chalice.
Okay.
And he Thoughtseizes his opponent. He's playing Green Black Depths. Storm is a tough matchup because you don't have force, you don't have counter spells. He Thoughtseizes his opponent on one. His opponent shows him Lion's Eye Diamond, Lotus Petal, land, Infernal Tutor. He's dead on turn one, right?
Yeah.
Chalice of the Void.
Okay.
And so he takes the Infernal Tutor to not die on turn one. One of the lands is Ancient Tomb, Soul Land. He takes it. The guy goes, okay, Chalice on one, go. He goes, okay, untaps, plays a second swamp, Hexmage, remove your Chalice counters.
Yeah.
Nice Lotus Petal, double Lions on Diamond.
Just locks his opponent out
Okay.
of the game.
Immediately over.
That's so good.
Yeah.
See, this
Oh my
is
God.
exactly the type of play pattern and story that makes me dislike that era in Magic where they printed targeting restrictions on cards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one, hey?
That's a really good
It's
Yeah.
whew. It's a
That's
good
nuts.
one. Oh man.
Hexmage, there's a few others, which I'm not going to get into now, but Hexmage does stuff like that in Legacy constantly. He got another one, actually, so we'll double this blowout up, and I'll just tell the one other before I just start popping off about how nuts Hexmage is.
All right.
He makes the 2020 just off of Thespian stage, still has a Hexmage, and his opponent playing Death and Taxes goes, activate the Vial on 3, so clearly going to flicker,
Yeah.
Flicker Wisp. He's like, no, in response, with the trigger on the stack for Vial, sack my Hexmage, put in your 0-drop.
That's
Because you can
pretty good.
respond to
Yeah,
Aether
yeah.
Vial triggers.
That's pretty good.
Hexmage is, that's a card.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the Chalice one is like, that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Just like lock out your opponent's hand. And
Yep,
then
see ya. And
game's
then
over.
just make it 2020 in a couple turns, whatever.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. You got time.
Yeah.
They can't kill you.
No. Man, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all for joining the club this week. Make sure, as always, you check out wizardtower.com for all your Magic single needs. If you want to support the show, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/DWC Podcast. We're on Twitter at DWC Podcast 1 and the Disorganized Wizard Club Podcast on Facebook. However you listen to the show, whether it's Podbean, iTunes, any podcast app, leave a review, rate the podcast, share it with your friends. Everything helps this thing keep growing and bring it to new listeners.
We're also on Spotify now.
And we are on Spotify
Check
now.
it out.
Yeah, long time coming. We're there. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Later.